At the FCC hearing on media ownership, which took place at the new Seattle Public Library Auditorium, dozens of people testified that the FCC had buried important research on media consolidation for its own political purposes. An internal FCC report based on independent research conducted by Professor Danilo Janich was leaked to Congress earlier this year. The study revealed that, contrary to the Commission's public claims, corporate media consolidation does not lead to more local news coverage in communities across the nation. Professor Janich is director of the Master's and PhD programs in Urban Affairs and Public Policy at the University of Delaware. He says the FCC deliberately buried the study because its conclusions did not agree with current U.S. government policy. He also claims that the FCC broke the law when it attempted to hide his research from the public.
If you have policymakers who have already reached a conclusion and there is research from their agency that is in direct contradiction of that conclusion, you simply suppress it. Under administrative law, that would be illegal.
After the study was leaked to Senator Barbara Boxer, the FCC claimed its officials had never seen the report. Professor Janich is publicly challenging those statements made by the Commission.
The suggestion from now Chairman Martin and others, former Chairperson Powell, that they never saw it is just disingenuous to me.
Janich sees the current round of FCC hearings on media ownership as a process with huge economic implications for media corporations.
There's a lot at stake. There's a lot of stuff going on. Big-time stuff, big-time policy implication stuff where there are billions of dollars at stake.
According to additional public testimony given at the Seattle hearing, the FCC has also ignored other academic reports on media ownership. A recent study sponsored by the Bannon Foundation on cross-ownership of newspapers and television stations, and another report conducted by the public interest group Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting on the lack of minority ownership in the U.S. were both critical of the FCC's current policies towards corporate media consolidation. Philip Napoli is associate professor at Fordham University and director of the Donald McGannon Communications Research Center. Napoli and his colleagues have just completed the most comprehensive study ever done on cross-ownership of newspapers and television stations in the U.S. Their report, which was submitted to the FCC in October, also found that consolidation of corporate media ownership does not result in more coverage of local news stories. He claims that Janich's research is vital information that should be shared with the public.
The suppressing of that study made public what a lot of people have been hearing about the situation at the FCC for a number of years, that research is really used to primarily support policy decisions that have already been made and not to really guide policy decision-making. As an academic researcher, it makes you a little cynical about what role, if any, the research that you do can play in the process, because you do this kind of research under the hopes that it can sort of guide policymakers in their decision-making.
Michael Yan, assistant professor in the Department of Communication Studies at the University of Michigan, participated with Philip Napoli in the study on cross-ownership. Professor Yan has also conducted research on racial issues and the media. His projects focus on government policy regarding mass media and its effects on society.
I think people have to always keep in mind the three policy goals of media policies, which have been articulated very well. They are competition, diversity, and localism. The FCC has embraced the notion that cross-ownership actually increases local informational programming, including local news and local public affairs programming. So the findings of this study did not lend support to that notion.
This is Taylor-Canfield reporting for Free Speech Radio News in Seattle.